The question is, how does MMR work and when are we getting ranked? Normally we're just hitting the MMR or the rating of how good we are when we're playing normal queue. Naturally, there is a MMR in most games when it comes to the normal queue. The reason for this, and the most important reason as to why they do this, is because you should not be allowed to play or to keep beating up bad players just because you're being randomly selected to play against a bunch of bad players. If the percentage of good players, let's say the top 10% or the top 15%, even more, keeps playing against the bottom 15% of players, they're just not going to have a good experience. And those bottom 15% of players are just constantly reminded that they're incredibly bad and they'd rather just choose not to play the game. On the other hand, if the game is more competitive, the top players are likely to have a better experience, as well as the bottom players are likely to have a better experience because they're playing against players that are around the same skill level as they are, and they don't have to worry about trying to outdo themselves or trying to be better than what they're not even able to reach to an extent. So we've talked about skill issues before in this channel. We've talked about Tasmanian Devil being incredibly busted, and Finn specifically has been super overtuned. Velma has been overtuned as another example. But when you give that character to lower level players, sometimes they're not really taking advantage of these cases, and I digress. MMR, I don't think it should necessarily be presented in normal queue. I think the reason that it is currently being presented to us is because they don't have the rank system available to us, or it's not done yet, and they want to have a way for players to feel expression of skill in one way or another without they themselves feeling like they're just playing for nothing. But in this case, you're playing for MMR. Even if there is no ranks currently available, that is what is currently happening. My biggest issue with the normal queue is that it is way too wide of a gap between players when they are playing. If you ever go to tracker.gg, so these are my games that I just played and I just experienced. I lost, and that's why I'm making this video, because I'm super triggered. If I click one of these games, it'll tell me the MMR of the other players in my lobby. 1,108 is really far from me. It's a lot of games. It'll take you about 20 victories to even get this far. They would have to be stacked for it to even be worth it. The MMR differences can sometimes vary very heavily. So right here, I was doing with someone that is 1659, and we were playing against other players that were relatively similar MMR. I am very, very far from this guy that I'm playing with. That is a reason that normal queue is naturally normal queue. You can queue up with whoever you want, and you won't necessarily have to worry about who you're playing with or who you're playing against. Let's go to this one. This one, the game is actually super uneven against my opponent. I have a teammate that is 1664, and then we're playing against the 1264 and 1354. This is not fair to them. They are naturally set up to lose. Does that mean that they will lose? Of course not. There are games where I myself will lose, or I myself are winning. So in this case, we actually lost this game. So yeah, there's like games where before even seeing that we lost this game, I can tell you that I probably lost this game because the unknown player has such a high rating, and I'm playing against someone that is really good compared to as capable as I am. Let's go all the way down. These are closer games. This is a little bit off, but not that far. You see a relevancy in skill, but what happens when I queue up with someone that's a lot lower rating? Unknown player has 410, but I'm playing at 764 and 725, and I'm 1317. This is not fair to them at all. At all. It is one of those reasons that MMR being presented to us, though in normals, makes people feel a little bit worse because they're realizing that how bad they are at the game. So, for example, if you're really low rating, or if you are able to visually see what rating you are in the leaderboards of all players, you can scroll down and I can see that you can be up to 13 million and even further down. And the only way to increase that number is by playing a specific character. So here are the questions. How do I increase my MMR? My MMR, if I go to leaderboards and I look at my career stats, is based on the highest MMR that I have on a character. How do I find out the highest MMR that I have on a character? You go to your roster or collection. You will click on a character and it'll show you your MMR right here on teams or on solos. I rarely ever play solos, but you can see it there too. You can then be given the MMR of every single character that you play. Every single character character that you play has a different MMR than the other, meaning that if you queue up for a game with a specific character that you have a very low MMR compared to your regular main, you'll actually play easier games because your MMR is so low. If you play a game with your highest rated character, in this case for me it would be Velma, I'd be playing against players that have a similar MMR to me or relatively similar. As I mentioned, you can still play against players that have a rating of 1100 or up to 1600, which is practically the top 1%. And finally, Tony recently mentioned about MMR being changed to upgrading or changing by 4 points rather than changing by 0.5. Some changes to matchmaking rating MMR have been rolled out. Changed the MMR floor from 0.5 to 4. Changed the MMR threshold for high level matchmaking to 1900 in a 1v1. Implemented a minimum floor for matchmaking rating based on highest rated account character. So minimum floor also representing that now if you queue up with a new character, you're no longer going to be placed against noobs. You won't have to be climbing up excessively or have to play a massive amount of games on that character to climb up. It'll be based now on the highest character that you have. That's all that MMR is as of this moment. Currently, we are waiting to see when ranked comes out. When ranked comes out or when ranked is presented, MMR is probably going to start being hidden on normals and then being shifted fully to ranked systems, so now you can only play or see your MMR on that. And I think that should be the case, whether it happens or not, but I think that should be the case because I think it constantly showing MMR normals might sway some people away. It's a similar reason that people play only ARAMs in League of Legends. They just want to have a good time, and constantly seeing an MMR system and telling that you're really bad at this game might dissuade them from wanting to keep playing if they're constantly being told that they're bad. So those are my opinions on it as for the whole concept of MMR and being presented to us in normal queue. What do you think? How high MMR have you gotten? And if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe as it helps the channel grow.